Okay, it really pains me to have to watch year after year as you all fuck up what capitalism is. And I'm talking about, I don't care if you're a fucking communist. You don't know what fucking communism is. You don't understand it. You're the ones out there who uh, give ammo to the right wing and the middle and uh, to Democrats who talk about us like we're some kind of fascists or something. You don't understand communism either. Nobody understands communism. Whoopi Goldberg doesn't understand communism. Uh, what's her name? Behar doesn't understand communism, and certainly Meghan McCain doesn't understand communism. I'm going to explain to you right now what communism is, okay? Communism is a concept that goes back probably as long as there's been human beings. And it's very simple. Somebody in your neighborhood loses their job or loses their income, isn't able to take care of themselves. Uh, Maybe it's in a developed enough community that you can honestly look at whose fault it is. Maybe nobody's sharing water with them, so they can't grow food, or nobody will help them learn how to hunt because they just don't care about them. Whatever it is. And you care. So you say to the community, come on, man, let's help this guy out and his, wife or girlfriend or whatever. And the people who have more in your community go, nah, he's on his fucking own, man, and we don't give a shit about him, basically. They don't come out and say that, but they show that, and you get upset. Okay, now you're a communist. Like Jesus was a communist, or Buddha was a communist. All the communism is people who care about other people. Now, when a lot of people in a community, and when you get large communities, like the world, we're all one big community, and nations are all one community, and cities are all one community, and your neighborhood is all one community. But when you get large communities and they decide to basically form, uh, what do you call them? Well, I can't think of that word right now, but basically, yeah, interest groups. So you get a bunch of people, they call themselves communists, and they form an interest group. Maybe they form a communist party. And then, maybe some of them, maybe the communists take over like they did in Russia in 1917. And then all of a sudden, the whole world looks at them and says they're communists. And so you get a guy like Stalin, and he's heavy-handed or whatever. You get a guy like Mao, and I still, to this day, after studying Mao thoroughly, do not believe that he was a bad guy at all. Stalin, huh? Stalin was born out of a really, really vicious. He was born out of World War II. But what I'm saying is you get history decides that that's what communism is, and maybe it decides that such and such is democracy, and such is socialism, and such. And so you get historic events like Moscow, like Stalin starving people to death in uh, where was it, the Urals in Ukraine or wherever. So you get this, and of course the capitalists, that definition, right? They want the worst possible definition. Okay? So don't trust your history books. Don't trust your people on the news. Don't even trust liberals. Because I'll show you right in here where, uh, let's see if I can
like
find
what
it.
Joy Behar was discussing, which is the Scandinavian countries. So there is some confusion around the terms, but essentially, just to correct Whoopi Goldberg, democratic socialism is not referring to the Democratic Party socialism. It's referring to democracy socialism. Now, on to some of the other things here. So, I haven't even got to the good stuff. And by the way, I should also mention, the reason why people use the phrase democratic socialism, let me try to move on. So, okay, I don't know. I'm going to be all over the place here because Meghan McCain was also all over the place, but Jesus. Okay, so she brings up Venezuela. Of course, Venezuela. She's like, name me any other country where socialism has worked. And then Joy Behar lists off the Scandinavian countries. And maybe my favorite part of that whole clip is Meghan McCain then goes, well, you can't expect to, you shouldn't compare the U.S. to a small country in Europe. You just compared the U.S. to Venezuela. So, how the F is that any different than Joy Behar comparing the U.S. to a tiny country in Europe? It's not different. So, when she's put into a corner on Venezuela, she has no idea what to do because the Venezuela attack argument is complete bullshit. Venezuela has essentially turned into a dictatorship. So, yes, there are different ways.
Okay. So you see, he's a socialist. I mean, this guy, socialist, well, I think he is. I mean, he's doing a show that generally supports Bernie Sanders, which is, our guy, progressives guy. So he's basically a progressive. And he says, I mean, Venezuela is not a dictatorship. Venezuela just had what is, and Jimmy Carter and the, all these monitoring groups say that Venezuela has the best system in the world. And here's a guy who's, it's not a dictatorship. Where do you get that? And where do you get the, the whole thing's so stupid because actually, even though Venezuela is very much a capitalist system, the country is run by capitalists. They still have all the power, all the economy. The only thing they don't have is the presidency. And the president has, they only nationalized one company, and that's the oil company. And they've raised 50%. There are half the number of poor people in Venezuela as there were before Chavez. And generally speaking, they've alleviated that awful poverty that they suffered under the complete control of the capitalists. The capitalists still, why do you think they have these small bands of paramilitaries or whatever you want to call them running around burning people alive, murdering Chavez, just regular people? I mean, basically these are racists, right? I mean, they're part white or all white from Spain, or from Europe somehow, against all the indigenous people. And the indigenous people outnumber them by quite a bit in Colombia, and even a lot of the non-indigenous people support the indigenous people, and they don't support the thugs that the ruling class continue to encourage to riot, etc. And no, Venezuela is not rich, and it's got its problems, but its problems aren't the Chavez Maduro presidencies. Its problems are capitalists, and they are fully funded and backed. Okay, so this isn't about Venezuela, but I could go on and on and on, and I could explain to you Venezuela. I can show you a video that you can watch that covers it all, so I don't have to explain it, and I don't have to prove it because it's just like almost any other Republican talking point. It's already been debunked, right? Venezuela's just fine as long as the United States and Europe would keep their fucking noses out of it trying to make money off of it. I mean, Europe and America's just a proxy army, a proxy covert army, CIA and stuff for Europe. Okay, I know that Americans like to think that America is great because we won World War II for Europe, and that somehow we're the superpower. No, we're not. We're just their thugs and their lackeys. Every little peon, piece of shit hillbilly who joins the army, who thinks that they're somehow glorifying the United States, are actually just, uh, mercenaries for Europe. Europe continues its colonialization through economics capitalist system, using the United States, Canada, and Australia from time to time as proxy. Okay? You get it? Do you get it? I mean, I've told you guys this a million times. Do you finally fucking get it? Because I don't see anybody else following this logic. I don't see anybody else following this logic about, how stupid, love you guys. What's your name from the Rational National and all the other ones. But very few of you even recognize the fact that, and my God, I stopped watching TYT a year ago, and that chick that's on there just constantly calling Venezuela a dictatorship, and Maduro and Chavez dictators. They had a coup. What coup? Chavez was involved in a failed coup 5 years before he was elected as president. He was never the head of the country because of a coup. It was always because of elections, and it's just ridiculous that you guys can't fucking get it straight, man. Get it straight. Stop being dummies, okay? Because you're fucking up, okay? It'd be one thing if you were right, but what you're doing is you're reiterating uh, capitalist talking points, conservative establishment talking points. What are you thinking, man? At least go do your homework before you start babbling their bullshit, you know? So, David Dole, you need to get your shit together here on this. Others need to get their shit together on Syria. I mean, there's no supporting a dictatorship like the Assad regime murdering at least 250,000 people. No way. You can't justify it by ISIS. You can't justify it by Turkey. You can't justify it by the United States. You can't justify it in any way. So all these things that I badger you guys about, you need to get your shit together. Now, as far as he can't get it right. Well, imagine how far off these people are. Now, Behar seems to be the only one who's got her shit together here. But why get frustrated when somebody throws Venezuela in your face. There's nothing wrong with Venezuela except for American and capitalist oppression that is, hundreds of years old, and it still goes on. Don't fool yourself, man. Uh, Places like Nicaragua and Venezuela, they're not Cuba. The reason things are so much better in Cuba, I mean, Cuba is impossibly poor. I mean, no, it's not as poor as Venezuela, but that's because it's been able to take its poverty and the best thing in the world for poverty, for very poor places, is a communist regime or president in this case. I mean, again, now Fidel Castro and he was never he was never head of the country as a dictator. Everybody's called him a dictator all my life. He was elected every time. And, you let American capitalists convince you that he wasn't elected and that he's somehow made himself president uh, through some kind of, I don't know, subversion or coup or cheating. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. The truth is that he had such overwhelming support. It can look like a dictatorship because, you know, and it's the opposite. Because in the United States, when you have right wing popularity, it's all a scam, right? But when you have real popularity, when people just love the president and they elect him, and it's overwhelming and it's a landslide. Okay, so you take a landslide by a populist and then a landslide by a propagandist, and you conflate them because that's what they want you to do. They want you to think that the populist election of a leader like Castro, now somebody who the people in Cuba, vast majority of them, 90% of them love, would never vote for Batista or another mafia-owned, American mafia-owned. I mean, can you imagine if the Russians, no, I don't want to talk about the Russians. Okay, so let's say the Canadians completely funded and backed some guy in the United States to be president because they wanted to basically take over our country and rape us and steal our money and make us work cheap for them. That's not. If they were able to fund somebody and convince Americans overwhelmingly to landslide elect the person, how would America feel if they found out that's what they did? I mean, they're bitching because they think that Russia used some troll farm to put some ads on Facebook. Can you imagine what they'd think about that? So, I mean, you got to use some analogies sometimes, right? That's not so. So, a propagandist president is the opposite of a populist uh, president or government or whatever. Anyway, I'm getting kind of off into the wilderness here, so I'm going to stop right now. Behar really is the best out of all these, but none of them. Well, maybe she does. I don't know her well enough, but she is on the right side of things. Well, I've said enough. I think you know my opinions about all these people, and I'm just, my main problem is all these people who fucking think Venezuela is a dictatorship. Nicaragua. I mean, Daniel Ortega is like our George Washington, except for he's much more cool. He is mellow and relaxed, and he allows. I mean, we didn't. Well, maybe we did because I think we did allow Britain to basically take the United States back over in its own way. But guys like Chavez and Maduro and Ortega, they really, unlike other communists, what you call dictators or vicious revolutionaries, uh, they didn't ever crush the capitalists in their countries, and they allow them to continue, and that's why you still have these rebellions like what's going on in Nicaragua right now, because they allow them to survive and to flourish, and they can't seem to figure out a way to keep the United States and Europe, really Europe, but us as their proxy, from coming into their countries and raising hell and trying to kill them. I mean, that's what's going on in Nicaragua right now. I mean, if I were Ortega, I'd fucking wipe these people off the face of the map, face of the earth. I mean, there would be a bloodbath like you couldn't even imagine. I would just wipe them out. You know, they got a lot of fucking nerve. Ortega, Maduro, and all these guys are just trying to. They're not even trying. They're really doing it. They're making their country a better place for their people, and they're uh, elected. They're popular with the people, and of course, it's got a lot to do with the fact that they're poor countries. So if you get elected by all the massive amounts of poor people, then of course, uh, I mean, these people have a mandate, and for foreign powers. I mean, you think we're all scared of the Russians right now? Well, it's nothing compared to what the United States is doing all around South America, and we're successful. We're successful in Brazil. We're successful in Colombia. As far as I know, we're successful in Mexico. I think we still control a lot of like Argentina, probably Peru, maybe Ecuador, and all through subversion, all through exactly what we blame the Russians for, except for real. I mean, we're really there. We're really funding these people and arming these people. We're still arming these asshole Contras, the ones that Reagan got in so much trouble for with the I forget what the name of the amendment made it illegal for him to do that, and he continued to do it anyway. That's what Oliver North. That's what North and Bush bringing tons of cocaine into this country. Well, having other people bring it in, having other people sell it, but they got the money and used it to fund basically what's terrorism around South America, probably in Mexico, Central America too. Okay, so I know I said I was going to shut up, but I think that's an important point. And you should all understand what happened with, well, I can't think of his name now, but the guy with the San Jose Mercury, and there's a movie, and he's quite a famous guy, played him in the movie, all about the journalist and who committed suicide because he was driven to suicide by the Bushes and those types of people. because he was trying to prove that um, this Iran-Contra thing was all about bringing cocaine into our country, and that it was the crack epidemic in East Palo Alto, where I went to high school. I saw all this. I was, I was there, so of course I know about all the cocaine that was flooding in. I'm not going to get into all the details because it was all highly legal, of course, but I saw it. I saw what was going on. I saw what my friends were doing, and they were getting it from these same people, but we didn't. Nobody knew it at the time. But this guy at the San Jose Mercury, he ran these stories, and everybody found out. Now, you should all know about those things. If you don't know anything about this stuff, then you're not being a good progressive. Everybody should understand all the details, and I'm talking about from the nasty side, from what we've found out about Iran-Contra, about the savings and loan scandal. Well, it was actually a heist. Those banks were all robbed, basically, by Bush and his friends. What they did was they put, like, all of Bush's sons were in charge of different banks. All the rich people, they basically played games with the money, and they also gave huge loans out to people who they were getting to do covert ops, knowing that, or that they owed favors to get all this stuff done, knowing that the money would never be paid back, which is what caused the savings and loans to all go under. Okay? Again, I'm done.